No pun intended, episode lucky number 13, and it's that wonderful time of the year. We have meaningful chess. We got candidates going, and round one, four draws, but they were not boring, bland draws. They were nice fighting draws. How's it going, Matt?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Jesse?
I'm good. I had some fun watching the games today. I didn't get to watch all of them, but I saw Nepo Apasov and the other game that drew early. I saw they drew. I just caught up with Fabi's game, Fabi Naka, and what was it? Ali Reza and Pragnananda just drew as well. So four draws. Everyone is in first place, but nice amount of games. I feel like every games they were playing for a decisive game, Jan and Abasov seemed like it fizzled out pretty early, but the other games seemed like they were fighting.
And even Jan and Abasov, I felt like there was just that little glimmer of hope for Jan in the middle of the game. When the pieces started trading off, I think the engine said around point two for Jan. And when you're playing the black pieces and you're playing the lowest seed in the tournament, that gets you a little bit excited, I think. He doesn't obviously know the eval, but I'm sure he could feel that he had a very small edge.
Yep, I think so. And I wonder how much he was wanting to push that because we're talking about before. It's a tiny advantage and it's probably not anything. He could maybe press for 5 hours in an exhausting game and try to squeeze blood out of an onion or whatever you say. But it maybe would have like affected him the rest of the tournament. I don't know. It's probably too early to be thinking about that. But I think he was probably just happy to get on the board, take a draw, get out of there.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was like a moment at the end where the rooks went back and forth. So obviously, there's going to be a million candidate spoilers today, guys, if you're planning on watching the games later. But there was a million rook moves back and forth, or a threefold rep, and the commentators were saying, Judith Polgar, Robert Hess, they were saying GMs don't like to go into king and pawn endgames because of the chance that they mess up like an obvious draw, and the players avoided it. But I was thinking maybe Jan should have went into that king and pawn endgame because Abasov did have the doubled e pawns and they were isolated just to see if he messes up. I mean, we've seen Ali Reza mess up some very basic endgames in classical king and pawn endgames as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know, maybe he should have just tried. If he was very confident that he wasn't losing, you may as well try it. I mean, try to get a cheap win early on, quote unquote cheap win.
Yeah.
See if your opponent's going to blunder. I don't think that's a bad strategy at all. Yeah, GMs are just like us. We avoid the king and pawn end games. If I know I'm in a lost position, sometimes I'll just trade down to a king and pawn end game and hope that I can save a draw sometimes. I wouldn't recommend, but I do that.
I mean, if you know you're a little stronger than your opponent in endgames, I think it's a very reasonable strategy. Like, okay, maybe they don't know opposition or they aren't going to count the tempo. I think that's good.
Yeah. I was watching Abasov's post round interview, and he revealed that he was playing with a torn ACL. I think he tore
Ooh.
it a few months ago, and the I can't remember who was interviewed. Oh, I think it was Mike Klein for chess.com. He does all their chess kid stuff. Um, I think he asked him like, "Are you in a lot of pain?" And he just said he's in kind of like constant discomfort, but he wouldn't consider it pain. But I wonder if that's going to be a distraction or maybe like a welcome distraction. Like take your mind off the game a little bit.
No, I think that'd be really distracting in a bad way. You don't want to take your mind off the game like that. I mean, think of
Yeah.
like even if you're just stressed throughout the day and then you go play chess in the evening, that affects you. If you're tired, that affects you. And I think physical things affect you too. Headache, runny nose, sore, whatever, shoulder, tennis elbow on the moving arm, especially. But having your knee hurt while you're sitting at the board, that would be really annoying.
This reminds me of something else I wanted to talk about. So we'll get back to candidates in a sec, but quick detour. The Granky Chess Classic just happened, and the winner was none other than the Honorable Hans Niemann. But I watched one of his he's doing this big series on like Road to World Champion or Road to Candidates or whatever. And in the first two rounds, so I believe the first day was two games, and he said he woke up with a splitting earache. It was like so bad he couldn't do anything. He's basically like nauseous. He couldn't sit still. He had a constant ringing, and he went to the hospital, and they basically like didn't couldn't see him in time for him to go make his game, and he went to his game and had an ice pack on his ear and was basically just like numbing his ear for the first two rounds, and he actually got two wins. But it reminded me of that. And anything Han says, I kind of just like log it away. Like I'm not sure if he's telling the truth. I'm not sure if he's lying, but I just kind of I just kind of like note it to see, follow up with it later, see if he's telling the truth. So anything he says, I say take with a grain of salt, but that's such a crazy distraction that he's played through and still won both of his games.
So do you remember the conspiracy theory at St. Louis where he had the pack of five gum
Oh,
and
I
the
do remember
guys
the,
would do the wand on him and he'd be
yeah.
holding his arms out and he's got that pack of gum and the guy just kind of peeks into the pack, not thoroughly inspecting like could it be underneath the inner wrappers, those kind of things. So when you talk about the ice pack on the ear, I'm looking at Presta J's comment thinking, okay, you're holding something up to your ear during the game. Was that ice pack inspected?
Yeah, did you get a little microphone snuck into the ice pack? He did say the ice pack was provided by the tournament director, so probably not.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, but yeah, that was cool. He finished with 8 out of 9, which is a crazy result in an open. And I think it was over 2,800 performance rating, and he's again just like 5, 10 points away from 2,700. So it'll be interesting to see if he's going to get some of those top level invites in the next couple of years. Who knows? I still don't know what to think about Hans.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Part of you doesn't want to trust him just because of the history, but he's such an entertaining figure. Whether you love him or hate him or don't know where to stand, everything he does is entertaining. And he's got a personality that grows the game, I think, whether he ends up being sort of like the heel figure or the hero figure. Everyone kind of wants to tune in and hear what's happening with him. And his chess is pretty inspiring. So we were just talking about Presta J and I and you and I about kind of the drawishness of different players and how
Hmm.
players who draw less often are more likely to win tournaments. Hans doesn't draw a lot. And he's also playing against people under 2,700 quite a bit. And if you look at the FIDE kind of like deflation, inflation statistics, the very top GMs are all getting some deflation pressure. So it makes you wonder, is Hans actually stronger than 2,700 already? Let's say 2,720, but he just so happens to be facing this field of underrated players in the 2,600s.
Yeah, I think time will tell on that because I think if you threw in like Naka with the 26 to 2,700s, he'd eventually show his class and rise above the 2,700. So I think we'll be having this conversation of April of next year, episode 65. No, yeah, 65 of no pun intended. We're talking about Hans Niemann as like number 22 in the world or something like that.
And I think you're right. And can you imagine if he qualifies for the next candidates?
That would be crazy. We got to get him in there. We got to get Wei Lee in there. Who else would you want to see in the candidates next year?
Wei Yi would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think Aragasi would be great. He's kind of an up and comer. He's had a nice little run.
Oh,
Um,
Nordebek for
oh yeah,
sure.
Notabrick for sure. If he doesn't make it in, that would be too sad. He's number 4. That's crazy.
Yeah, he should have been in it this year. He just didn't
Yeah.
qualify.
Yeah. One guy I would really like to see in the candidates next cycle is Magnus.
Oh, yeah. That'd be so cool.
Hope he
I
comes back
wonder,
into it.
would they feed Magnus right into a championship if he wanted to come back? Like maybe on the off year or something?
I feel like you gotta give him the immediate title shot. It's like GSP coming out of retirement. You're not
Yeah.
gonna throw him out there against like a number 3 contender. Like who wants to see Magnus versus like Karyakin or something? Okay, bad choice there, but I mean Magnus versus a Nishigiri match for the no, world championship. No, you just got to throw Magnus in with the champ.
Or like if Nepo qualified again, if Nepo wins it and then Magnus, yeah, I don't know. I get what you're
I
saying.
I feel like if Nepo wins, and Magnus says he wants to join the cycle again, they'll just be like, okay, you're the champ. You already beat him. You don't have to prove
Yeah,
it.
just put Nepo back in the candidates.
Yeah. Nepo
Gotta
gets
win another one,
demoted.
bro.
Magnus is the champ.
I think
Um,
Vincent Keimer would be cool, or maybe Nihal Sarin. We don't hear a lot of those players, but they're right on the cusp of getting to that next level, I think.
yeah, I agree with you. Um, Other people that would be fun, but not necessarily like favorites to win or anything. I would say Jan Christoph Duda. He's still young, wins a lot of games like we're talking about. I would like to see MVL get another chance. So
Hmm.
good. Even guys like Levon, like I just want one more go, like one more run. Can he make it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel a niche too. He's young enough. I mean, he's almost 30. He'll be 30 in the next couple months, but I feel like he's still got a run in him for sure.
I think though, and this is kind of sad for me to say, but players over 35 now are going to have a really tough go at it. This is the first candidates in quite a while where we've got this new generation playing, and I think they're just going to get stronger and stronger. And the players over 35 being at that high of a rating is really hard to keep up without having that just slow decline starting to take place.
Yeah, the youngsters are for sure coming at it quick. Let's see, there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven people under 20, over 2,700. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And if you look at the top 10 players in the world, Hikaru is the oldest at age 36. And
Yeah.
the next oldest player is Jan at 33. I mean, I think Jan and Magnus are both 33, but it just goes to show like it's a younger generation right now that's taken over.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that like kind of handoff. One other name I want to throw out for candidates next year, Wesley. So I still think he has a chance to.
Yeah, that'd
Fellow
be cool.
Minnesotan, gotta shout out Wesley. So
How old is Wesley? Oh, he's 30. Okay.
yeah, 30. So he's still got time.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so round one was today. Round one, or sorry, round two. Let's go over round two pairings.
Oh, do you want to talk about any of the other round one games?
Yeah, sure, actually. Let's go to, so we talked about Nepo and Abasov, kind of a quiet draw to get started. I think the spiciest game was Naka versus Fabi. So Fabi has the white pieces. Naka plays a Sicilian with an early E5. What is the name of that variation?
It's
Give me
saying
just
Venice attack.
Venice attack. Okay. So instead of playing A6 like you would in what's the name of that Sicilian?
Oh, Najdorf, he went with more of it's almost Sveshnikov, except Fabi played bishop to b5 check. So I don't really know the theory at that point, what it's called. But it looks a little like a Sveshnikov pawn structure, at least.
Yeah, and it's objectively not great for black. And actually, by move, so let's check out move eight. On move eight, in the database, there are 30 games in the Masters database. 50% draws, so 15 draws, 43% wins for white, and I think there's one win for black, something
Yeah,
like that. So not a great, I guess, two wins for black. So just based off the Masters database, it looks like white has everything to play for, and black's not really getting anything. And after move, let's see, after move 10, Naka's gonna take Fabi's knight on f5, doubling his f pawns. In the 22 games, there are 10 wins for white and 12 draws. So no wins at all for black.
it's
So
almost it's almost like Nakamura said, I knew you might go into this line and I prepped this sort of forced draw sequence.
yeah, I kind of get the sense though that the opening kind of went the way Naka wanted it to. Like he played the early E5 to kind of go into this. So maybe he was just hoping for a position that he knew he could hold for a draw.
Hmm.
But yeah, he clearly was prepared in it and had a good game. He plays this crazy move on move 13. He plays E4 to a square that is like can just be captured. So sacks the E4 pawn. Fabi takes it. He takes back, and so at this point, Naka's up like a knight for a pawn, but his knight is lost. There's no way to save it. And I don't know how. I guess you can see I can find the move e5 because it opens up the bishop to capture the b2 pawn, but you're trading an e pawn for a b pawn. I don't know why you would think that's good. Like I don't understand how these GMs come up with this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he was going for that opposite colored bishop position. Because if you look at the clocks, move 17 is about where we're talking about. Hikaru had an hour and 47 minutes left. Fabi had an hour and 12 minutes left. And I think Fabi probably gets nervous being low on time against Hikaru. There's got to be some sort of psychology behind that choice out of the opening as well. But what I found really interesting, Jesse, um, if you go a little later in the game, Fabi does get up to a +2 Stockfish eval. And this is on move 28. So Fabi was up one pawn. He had A and C pawns, which were both passed pawns. Hikaru
Hmm.
had an extra pawn on the king side. And if Fabi just starts running his A pawn up the board, he's +2 according to Stockfish. But instead, he just traded rooks and went into essentially a dead drawn endgame.
Wow, it's crazy it was that close. But yeah, Naka basically ends up giving up a pawn and allowing, well, two pawns really, and yeah, allows a passed a pawn for Fabi. But then Naka pulls out a move that I don't think anyone was looking at. He sacks his rook on f2, like can to be captured by the king. The only problem is that if the king takes, he's got a perpetual. He's got the dark square bishop, basically no dark square defense around his king. Fabi's queen and rook and light square bishop are on the other side of the board, and his rook's not too close. So he has no protection for the bear king. So it actually works in a way. It works in that you can't capture back, but it actually doesn't work super well if you just kind of ignore it because there's no real threats. So Fabio calmly takes a pawn back, so he's still up a pawn. Naka kind of gets his queen in, and um, after a few more moves, they kind of just settle into a drawn endgame.
Yeah.
So Fabi for sure had some chances here. I wonder if this was a little later in the tournament, like maybe their second pairing. If Fabi was in a position where he needed a win, if he would play this a little more aggressively, trying to go all out for a win. What do you think?
I think so. Because looking at the clocks on move 28, which I would say was the critical miss by Fabi, when he played rook f5, the eval went from 2 to 0.8. And very quickly after that, it went to zeros. He had 12 minutes on the clock and he went down to 9 minutes to play rook f5 against Hikaru's 33 minutes. And you got to think of like the speed chess championships or really any blitz or rapid event. Hikaru is such a beast. And Fabi's king is sitting on g2, which is not the safest square for the king. And there's still a lot of firepower on the board, two rooks, a queen, and a bishop each. I bet Fabi's at that point just like, okay, trading rooks is super low risk. Maybe he didn't calculate out that he would end up losing the A pawn by force in a few moves as he tried to push it. But he's probably thinking, let's go for a two result scenario. Most likely draw, but still very small chance I win and I'll never lose it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Fabi was for sure playing for a win here, but he didn't want to take too much risk because if you lose to Naka round one, that's really, really tough to come back from. So I think you're absolutely right. He wasn't playing for a draw, but he was playing for a low risk advantage. And that's ultimately what he got, but the advantage was too small to really do anything with. So they played another 10 or so moves. This game went 41 moves in total. So they make the time comfortably, but settle into a draw.
I think
Um,
you want to go to Ali Reza next.
yeah, so Ali Reza versus Prague. We're gonna do our best to make this audio friendly. We're not sharing our screen or anything, but maybe we'll go through these games in the after party. So we get e4, e5. Looks like they're following our Scotch for two moves. Goes with the Roy Lopez, and these super GMs just like play these Roy Lopez. Like he brings his bishop all the way to so he goes bishop b5 to a4 to b3, then he plays c3, then he plays bishop c2. So one, two, three, four, five moves with the bishop, and it's still all theory and it's still good. Like it just makes no sense. Anyway, I digress. And then he gives up he gives up his allows his knight to be captured in front of his king. So his pawn structure is pawn on h2, no g pawn, pawn on f2, pawn on f3. And he's just fine. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
No more principled chess. I don't understand at all.
And the commentators were talking about this position and they were saying that it actually maybe feels more fun to play from Ali Rez's point of view, just because he has the attack on that G file. So, like Jesse said, doubled F pawns, no G pawn for Ali Reza, tucking his king onto H1 in the corner, gives him that G file to attack. But later on, Prague did a great job kind of maneuvering his pieces around and sort of formed an attack of his own.
Yeah, but I think one thing that really makes that like allowing that knight capture. I think why it works, he's not getting immediately blown off the board is because Black had to trade their light square bishop, and so his light squares are very compromised, but he doesn't really have anywhere to get after the king on the light squares to like bring in a knight or rook or something. But and Ali Reza still does have his light square bishop they can use for protection.
I
And
think so.
so
If you were to say, out of the games so far, who's happier with the results of the first games that we've looked at?
I think Naka's got to be very excited to draw Fabi with black. I
I
would
agree.
say um Abasov, he's getting on the board with a draw. He's got to be happy. I think everyone's kind of happy with the result. I think Fabi I don't think he's upset, but I think he missed on some chances to really push. Um, I think Vidit actually, so we haven't gone over his game, but he had a nice position against Gukesh for a few moves. And then he played a very tricky bishop sacrifice, play like bishop g4 that can just be captured with a pawn, but you can't actually take it because it's instantly losing. But it does allow a perpetual.
So going into the Ali Reza against Pragananda game, this was a Roy Lopez with a ton of theory. It was open Roy Lopez. And we got to this position where Ali Reza was castled kingside. Pragananda had not castled yet. And Ali Reza gives up the F3 knight for Pragananda's bishop. And in the process, it gave Ali Reza doubled F pawns in front of his king and no G pawn. But the king was hiding on H1. So it created this dynamic where Ali Reza had the half open G file to attack against Prague's king, but Prague had a much more solid position. And in a few moves, essentially Pragananda just flips the script and he grabs the initiative. He was up on time and he had his queen and rook attacking against Ali Reza's king. So this is why I think that the game should favor Ali Rez, or sorry, Pragananda in terms of who feels happy about this, because he took the black pieces and he just kind of said, okay, I'll take a punch to the mouth and then I'll just counter right back with an even stronger punch.
Yeah, nice to see a youngster kind of take initiative like that. I mean, they're both young, Ali Reza and Brog, but yeah, interesting games. They didn't even make it to move 40, so they agree, or I guess they didn't agree to drop. It was a perpetual check. Move 39. Prague had 2 minutes on his clock. Fallujah had 1 minute, so they're playing blitz at that point. And I don't actually think they get increment before move 40. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think Presta J or someone mentioned that in the chat too. No increment.
Yeah, no increment for the first 40 moves. I like that. And then you get 30 minutes and then a 30-second increment each move after move 40. So cool.
So I,
That was round one, four draws. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say let's recap the odds. Like, how do we think the odds are changing going forward?
I think everything stays the same. I don't think anything's different. Four draws. It's basically a 13 round tournament now.
Yep.
Um, yeah, most unhappy with round one, probably Nepo, because I think he had the black pieces. He had a slight edge. He probably could have pushed it. I also think Fabi had a miss for really pressing something and turning up the heat a little bit.
And maybe if we were going top three on happiness scale or rankings, I'll go Alireza number three.
Okay, it's not a good game from him.
Yeah, and I think that's a game where he could press to win with the white pieces.
Yeah. So that was round one. Four draws. Everyone tied for first place. Everyone tied for last place. We can go over the cadence of games. We have rounds two, three, and four the next 3 days, then a bye, rounds five, six, seven, and then a bye, rounds eight, nine, 10, and bye, rounds 11 and 12, bye, 13, 14, and then tie breaks. So we have 3 rounds bye, 3 rounds bye. So it's three on, one off, 3 on, one off, and then at the end it's 2 on, bye, 2 on. Round two. Let's check out the pairings for round two. I don't have them handy, but I think I can grab them.
I have him right
Okay.
here.
All right, you got them. Spit. What are the pairings round two?
Hikaru Nakamura, white against Vidit Gujrathi. What do you think about that one?
I think Naka's got to push for a win here.
Yeah, this is going to be huge. Because then we have Fabiano Caruana, white against Nija Abasov. What do you think on that one?
He's got to push for a win here. Same advice.
I mean, those two are going to be watching each other's boards very closely because I agree with you. But the problem for Naka, I think he's in a tough spot because Vidit is a stronger player than Abasov by 125 points, right? So if Naka presses too hard for a win because he sees that maybe Fabi's got like a nice +1, +2 position, maybe in the middle game, Naka starts making things crazy. Vidit could surprise him and take him down. And you don't want to be -1 as Naka if Fabi is +1. That's going to be a really rough rest of the tournament to try to make up 2 points.
Yep, for sure. The one thing going for Naka is he still has a white against Fabi, and he has beat him, I think, not counting today, like their last two classical games. So
Okay.
he's got that in his pocket. So if he needs to make up a lot of room, at least he's got white against Fabi. That's going to be in round eight, I think. I think they do pairings back to front again.
And I guess on the other side of the coin, it's like if Hikaru and Fabi have the same result tomorrow, so say it's a draw or a win, that's a huge boost for Hikaru because he's got an extra game against Abasov and he already drew Fabi playing black, like you mentioned.
Yep. So I think, yeah, I think you're right. As long as they can keep that going. And actually, next round, Naka plays Abasov with black. Interesting. Yeah, I think Fabi, yeah, and that's even a white, Fabi's white against Abasov too. So
Yeah.
if he can come out round two tied with Fabi, I think that's a huge win for him.
I haven't
Other two
seen,
games, oh, sorry, other two games, Prague versus Gakesh. Prague has white. Nepo has white against Faruja. I think either of those games could go either way, honestly.
I agree with you. Yeah, they both feel pretty close to coin flips.
Yep. I'm hoping we get some decisive games tomorrow, though. I'd like to see someone take a lead and get that storyline going.
Oh, Daniel's asking in the chat, when will your new beginners course code end? There's been a couple orders and they've been trickling in, Daniel, but feel free to email me if the code doesn't work. And just let me know that I mentioned this on the podcast. So anyone who hears this podcast, you can get the deal if you send an email to matt@chessgoals.com.
And what is that discount code for our beginner's course?
The code is WIN.
Win. There you go. I think you'll get what, 25% off?
Now I don't remember the discount.
It's a
Maybe
good
Daniel could
discount.
say in the chat.
It's a good discount.
Yeah. So I
All
think
right. So I was just gonna, okay, so yeah, round eight, I'm just jumping ahead. We have the exact same pairings as round one, but with colors flipped. So Naka will play Fabio with the white pieces, Jan versus Abasov with white, Prague versus Faruja, Vidit versus Gakesh. Just double checking on that. Vidit is inconsistent, but he occasionally pulls out some great games. Yeah, he dropped a bunch of rating his last tournament, right? But yeah, he kind of goes on runs. Very streaky player. Um, maybe that's good for him. Okay, code WIN is good for 50% off of our beginner's course. So enjoy it. Enjoy it, fam. All for you.
So probably what I'll do is run that code through the weekend because we will be announcing the part three course from the Nimzo Indian series. So we got Nimzo Indian part one, Queen's Indian part two. Then the part three is D4 deviations and like English and ready and some of those other non E4 D4 first moves.
Yep, and I am excited to work on the modern course. So this is an early development, but Matt and I are returning to do videos on a modern course. This is going to be a complete black repertoire against anything you're going to see. And how many lines you're shooting for? 100-ish?
It'll probably be a little over 100. I'm thinking around 120 to 130, but it's going to cover everything. E4, D4, C4, knight F3, you name it. And I'm excited about this course because I'm basing all of the chapters on different pawn structures, right? So it's like, okay, if white says, I want my pawns on E4, D4, C4, we're going to do this. If they're on just E4, D4, we're going to do something else. If they're just D4, C4. So what you can do is use a mental note and say, okay, with this pawn structure, we're going for this type of position. Then I'm going to throw in some sample games as well. We got a lot of Nakamura games, some other kind of like Title Tuesday games and things where super GMs are experimenting with some new ideas in the modern. So I'm really excited for this one. And what we should do, Jesse, is we should do a throwback to our recording setup for the Carol Concourse and just make it look the same.
Yeah, those were early on ChessGoals videos, and our lighting was not so good, camera quality not so great. But we're hesitant to redo those videos because it's just nostalgia and everyone
Yeah,
likes it. But
yeah,
maybe someday when ChessGoals grows and grows, we'll have to go back and revisit those.
yeah.
All right. If you want to stay updated on all of our courses, you can go to chessgoals.com/newsletter and you'll get our emails, and that will follow up with all of our course announcements. We have a bunch of goodies to give away if you join the newsletter, a free study plan, a bunch of our best blog posts, an ebook that Matt wrote about how to make master kind of wherever you're starting. So lots of cool stuff. If you want to check all that out, it's in the description below, chessgoals.com/newsletter. Um, I think we can take some questions or talk about whatever our topics are used up.
I have a
Matt, are you
question.
reading anything good?
Um, Not really. I'm kind of in between books right now.
I am reading like three books right now. One of them is called The Boys in the Boat. I think I mentioned this last podcast, but history book about a group of guys who won the gold medal in the I think the 1936 Olympics for rowing. And another book called Devil in the White City about the World's Fair in Chicago and a serial killer who lived like across the street. And maybe a couple others I can't remember.
Those books sound fascinating. I feel like I should stop my book. I'm reading Veronica Decides to Die. Have you heard that
N-
one?
Never heard of it. Is it a novel?
Yeah, same author as The Alchemist, and
Oh yeah.
it's his second highest rated book on Goodreads, but a lot of people say he's overrated as an author. So I thought, well, I'll try a second highest rated and see. And I'm not in love with it. I'm like halfway through.
His first one I didn't love. Or not his first one, but The Alchemist. I read it and it was fine.
Yeah,
Not Stieg Larsson, Paulo Coelho or something like that. Paulo
yeah,
Coelho.
Coelho. Hmm.
Yep.
Oh,
I do have a
Jesse
I do
Deadlift
have a
PR.
Stieg Larsson book right here, though.
Oh,
Girl
nice.
Who Played with Fire. I read Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and really liked it. My camera's blurry. But I haven't read the rest of the series, but I want to.
I've been into Herman Hesse lately.
Who's that?
Siddhartha, I read, and then I read his book called Demian or Damien.
Okay.
That was pretty good. And I'm gonna read the Narcissus and something. I forget. Oh, and Goldman. Narcissus and Goldman. I'm gonna read that next.
Okay, a couple fitness related questions. Okay, I bragged about my deadlift PR in Discord. First ever 295 on the deadlift. Question was sumo or conventional? I do all conventional. I don't really do any sumo deadlifts. Yeah,
No
happy with
chalk,
that
no
number.
straps, right?
Yeah, no chalk, no straps, just holding on. Recommended program for someone building back up to a 10K. I've not run in 4 months. Yeah, I would say do a lot of start with just doing zone two easy runs. Just do that for like a couple months and then start building in some speed work. But based on what we were talking about in your podcast where you ran a half marathon at like 209, I would say you should be doing like 11 or 12-minute miles to start. Keep your heart rate under maybe like 140 or so and do that for a few runs. Just go for a couple miles until you can work up to like 30, 40 minutes of going steady state.
And that worked really well for Jesse and I. Like Jesse got me started on the whole idea of slow running. And in the beginning, well, so you're already more advanced than this, but in the beginning, if you're brand new to running and you're listening to this, it feels so painfully slow because you might be walking at some points just to stay at that heart rate.
Yeah, for sure. I went for a run on Monday this week and I did a 10:30 pace and I really feel like I could have gone all day at that pace. Like I finished over 6 miles. It was like a little over a 10K and I felt like I could have done it over. Like I felt great at the end of it. And that was like the best run I've had in a long time, even though it was not super fast, 10:30 pace the whole time.
That is fast. That's good. And for you now, it's becoming more automatic, right? Like you can just get out there and cruise a lot of days and you look at your pace and it's like, oh man, that's way faster than I was 6 months ago or a year ago.
Well, I'm definitely a lot slower than my when I was peak marathon running. I remember I could just cruise on the treadmill at like a 9:15 pace for like 3 or 4 miles and stay in my zone two. But now it's like a minute slower than that
On the treadmill or
on the treadmill. Yeah,
okay. And you
yeah. I
do
haven't really.
1% incline?
Yeah, 1% incline. I don't really go outside and run during the winter just because it's so dark and I don't want to deal with all the like getting hit by a car. That would not be ideal.
Yeah. And you got a ton of hills by your house too.
I know, and it's all gravel, so
Hmm.
it's like the hardest of running. Um, all right. I think that's going to do it for the podcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I am so excited for the candidates. We are going to be back a little early. We're going to be on Tuesday next week. So because Matt's doing some traveling. Maybe we'll even try to do a bonus pod next week to cover an extra round of the candidates. We'll have to see if it's going to work out. But if you are watching live, stick around. We'll have some bonus content for you. Go over some games, maybe take some questions, just hang out. Um, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next episode.